How many of you understood that? Today we are studying intestinal protozoal diseases. What is protozoa? Unicellular eukaryotic organisms. They are different than bacteria, right? But they are capable of causing fatal diseases in humans. So we'll be studying intestinal protozoal diseases today, and we will be focusing on intestinal amoebiasis, giardiasis, certain opportunistic intestinal coccidian parasites. The name itself suggests that it's opportunistic, it's causing infection in most severe infections in HIV patients, and certain other parasites such as bacteroideasis, microsporidiasis, and blastocystosis, sarcocystis. Okay. Focusing on the important parasites that can cause intestinal infections. The name Entamoeba histolytica, what does it mean? Histolytica, what does it suggest you? It suggests that histo means tissue, right? Lytic means it's causing tissue destruction. So remember this name, it mostly relates to the pathogenesis of this organism, okay? Then intestinal flagellate, what does it mean? It has a flagellum, right? So this is Giardia lamblia. Are there any other flagellates that you have studied about which can cause blood infections? Yes, very good. Leishmania, trypanosoma, okay. Then there are certain opportunistic intestinal coccidian parasites. When you see these coccidian parasite, remember these are acid fast positive. Okay, you can stain them with modified Zeden stain. And Ballantadium coli. This is the only ciliated protozoa that can cause intestinal infection. Only ciliated. It has what? Cilia. Blastocystis hominis. This is a commensal in man's body, okay, but it is capable of causing infection. Sarcocystis causes accidental disease in man. It is not meant for humans, it is meant for what? Cattle and pig, but it is capable of causing human infections. Then microsporidia. Microsporidia is now considered as fungi, but you remember that it is also acid fast and you can stain them with Zeden stain. 1% modified Zeden stain. Okay. This is about all these intestinal protozoal infections we'll study today. Coming to intestinal amoebiasis. What does amoeba mean? Amoeba means change. So you can see this is a single cell organism, but it lacks rigid cell wall structure. So you can see it's moving like this. It moves with the help of pseudopodium. Can it suggest you something? Pseudo means fake, pod means feet, right? So it has a pseudopodia which helps it in locomotion. Okay? So it is able to, it's motile, it moves. So when you observe stool sample under the microscope, you will be able to see that it has got some motility. Okay. Then based on their habitat, we differentiate them into two. What are these two? Intestinal amoeba. It means they can cause intestinal infection. But there are certain free living amoeba that can survive in soil, water and environment, and they are able to cause what? Brain diseases. Right? So two kinds of amoeba you have to remember, intestinal and free living. Free living examples, most recently there was certain cases in Kerala, brain eating amoeba. What was that? Naegleria fowleri and Acanthamoeba and Balamuthia. Okay, these are all free living amoeba. Then what can amoeba cause? Amoeba is able to cause dysentery. Dysentery means blood and mucus, right? Diarrheal episode with blood and mucus, that is dysentery associated with pain, which is called as tenesmus. It can also cause certain invasive diseases. What are these invasive diseases? What do they mean by that? It means that they are causing extraintestinal infestations. Infestations like amoebic liver abscess. Can you see this liver specimen here? It can cause this kind of abscess. This is amoebic liver abscess. How is it able to cause this abscess? It is invading the intestine and entering the portal veins and going to the nearby organs. The most common site where it propagates is liver. Okay. Then there are 3 other species that you have to know. There is E. dispar, Entamoeba dispar, Entamoeba moshkovsky and Entamoeba bangladeshi. These Entamoeba are structurally similar to Entamoeba histolytica. So whenever we diagnose them in the laboratory, we give report as cyst or trophozoid of E. dispar, E. moshkovsky or E. bangladeshi seen in the stool sample. Okay. So how do you differentiate them? There must be something differentiating factor. To differentiate them, you have to perform PCR. Okay, polymerase chain reaction. Based on the genetic material, you will be able to discriminate them. Also, there is one more important factor, which is RBCs. These Entamoeba histolytica are able to eat up, they engulf the red blood cells. So, RBCs will be seen in which trophozoid? Entamoeba histolytica trophozoid. Okay. Trophozoids of all these 3 will not have RBCs in them. Understood? Coming to epidemiology, it is common in what kind of countries? Tropical and subtropical countries. So, countries like India, Bangladesh, Asian countries mostly. Okay. It is the 3rd most common parasitic cause of death. What is the first one? Very easy guess. Malaria. Okay. After malaria and schistosomiasis, it is able to cause death in 3rd number. Morphologically, it exists in 3 forms. The first form is trophozoid. Between trophozoid and cyst, there is a pre-cyst form. This is the developmental form. But you have to remember trophozoid and quadrinucleated cyst. This is the mature cyst, right? This is all the developmental forms. Trophozoid converts into pre-cyst, then converts into uninucleated cyst, then converts into binucleated cyst and then quadrinucleated cyst. Quadrinucleated means having 4 nuclei. Okay. So what do you expect? How many trophozoids will come out of this cyst? 4 trophozoids will come out of this cyst. But it is also said that even uninucleate or binucleate cyst can cause infection. Okay. What will be the infective form here? Cyst is the infective form. What will be the diagnostic form? Trophozoids and quadrinucleated cyst. Where will you find the trophozoid? Trophozoid is formed in active patients. The patients who are having symptoms, the patients who are having the disease, they can show you the trophozoids in stool. Cyst is passed in which patients? The patients who are asymptomatic carriers. Okay, they are carrying the cyst, but they are not having any symptoms. Why does it happen? Because all people have different immunity, right? Not every person is prone to all the diseases. Okay, so this is seen in only 10% of people develop symptoms. Okay, what is the life cycle of Entamoeba histolytica? Man is acquiring infection via contaminated food and water. How does the food and water get contaminated? Have you seen the cockroaches? Even cockroaches are running over the food and they are carrying these entamoebas in their legs. They can contaminate the food, right? So, through ingestion of contaminated food and water, man is acquiring what? Quadrinucleated cyst. This cyst undergoes excistation in small intestine. It means it releases the trophozoids in the intestine. From there, it is carried to the large intestine, where they will colonize this. But what happens? Will every trophozoid colonize this large intestine? some trophozoites are passed as it is in the stool sample. Okay. Some will penetrate the intestinal wall and transfer to the extraintestinal site, such as liver. So they will go to liver and they'll form liver abscess. Some intestine will invade the mucosa and form granulomatous tumors, okay, which is often confused with the colorectal cancer sometimes. So they also cause some granulomatous tissue tumors in large intestine known as amoeboma. Then they again undergo, some of them undergo encystation. What is encystation? They form the cyst out of trophozoite. They undergo developmental stage. They undergo encystation and they are released as mature cyst. And again, these both forms you can see in stool sample. Okay. So when trophozoites are released in feces, they are disintegrated. They do not survive in the environment. Okay. Only cysts are able to survive in the environment, and cysts therefore get contaminated with the food, and therefore they are transferred to the man. Okay. What are the virulence factors of amoeba? We saw that trophozoite is the invasive form. It was invading the submucosa, it was invading the intestinal layer, and it was, how was it able to do this? With the help of amoebic lectin antigen. Okay, this antigen helps this amoeba to attach to the intestinal layer. Then there is something called as amoeba pore. This antigen will cause pores in the epithelium. It digs hole in the epithelium. Okay. Then there are certain proteases. These proteases cause tissue destruction. All these are able to help with the invasion. They can invade the intestinal layer, they can invade the blood vessels. Okay. Green suit girl, stand up. Explain what is the pathogenesis, what are the virulence factors of amoeba. What is happening here? With the help of lectin antigen, it is colonizing the intestinal mucosa. What is colonizing? Trophozoites are colonizing the intestinal mucosa. Okay. Then with the help of galnac-lectin molecules, what is this? These are galactosidase inhabitants. Okay, that they are present on the epithelium. So with the help of these lectin molecules, they will be able to invade this mucosa. What are these? What is this specimen? These are flask-shaped ulcers caused by amoeba. Okay. Why flask-shaped? Because their base is wide and the neck is narrow. So internally they are causing more destruction. Okay. They are able to cause flask-shaped ulcers. We already saw that invasion is happening. They are invading the extraintestinal site and causing other manifestations. You can see here, these are flask-shaped ulcers, narrow neck and base is wide. Okay, they can cause deep extension beyond muscularis. They can also cause perforation, intestinal perforation. They can cause invasion of the blood vessel and transfer to other sites. Okay. What are other complications? They can cause amoebic appendicitis, amoebic dysentery. They can cause amoeboma or fulminant colitis. What is fulminant colitis? Exaggerated intestinal infection, diarrhea, fever, vomiting, lethargy, malabsorption, okay, all these episodes. So when there is amoebic dysentery, you have to think of the differential diagnosis. So we'll differentiate it from what? Bacillary dysentery. Can you name any organism that can cause dysentery? And Shigella. Have you heard about Shigella? Right. So we have to differentiate amoebic dysentery from bacillary dysentery. So when the sample is received in the lab, how will you differentiate it? This amoebic dysentery sample will be very malodorous, very offensive odor. It will be dark in color, and when you see, it will be not adherent to the container. It will not adhere to the container. But bacillary dysentery sample will be bright red in color and it will adhere to the container. Okay, the stool sample will stick to the walls of the container. That tells you that this could be a bacillary dysentery. Okay, in case of amoebic dysentery, in stool microscopic feature, we saw macroscopic feature. We saw how could we differentiate the sample just by the look. Now, under the microscope, what will you be able to see? You will see pycnotic bodies. What is pycnotic bodies? You will be able to tell properly. What is pycnotic bodies? It's a dense nuclei which happens after the cell dies, which happens after the necrosis of the cell. So, there is active inflammation. Okay, there is active destruction of the mucosal cell wall. So, you will be able to see this pycnotic bodies present in the amoebic dysentery. Also, eosinophilic metabolism will take place. You will see Charcot-Leyden crystals and eosinophilia. And organisms will be detected. In amoebic dysentery, you will detect E. histolytica cyst or trophozoite, or in case of bacilli, you will detect Shigella. How will you detect Shigella? Is it motile or non-motile? Non-motile. Is it gram-positive, gram-negative? Gram-negative. Okay. Also, you will use some selective media, bacterial selective media. Okay. Lab diagnosis of intestinal amoebiasis. Stool microscopy will show you what? In wet mount, how will you, what kind of wet mount do you do for stool sample? You do saline wet mounts and iodine wet mount. So, trophozoite is well appreciated where? Because you don't want to kill the organism to see the motility, iodine kills the organism. Will you be able to see its motility? No. So, you will be able to differentiate properly the motility in which wet mount? Saline wet mount. So, you have to do saline wet mount for trophozoites, for motility of the organism. What is the disadvantage of iodine mount? White shirt. Yes. Last second row, third girl. What is the disadvantage of iodine mount? You know the answer? You know why you're standing? Yes or no? I'll repeat once more. In wet mount, you will be able to distinguish the organism's motility properly. Okay. In iodine mount, nuclear material is enhanced. So, iodine preparation is used for to observe nuclear material. Okay. If you have to observe the trophozoite's motility, you will do saline wet mount. So, we are performing two kinds of wet mounts, saline wet mount and iodine wet mount. Okay. Okay, then you can perform biopsy stains with this permanent stains such as H&E and PAS stains, that is purely pathogenic. To understand the pathogenesis of the organism, you can do that. Then you can go for stool culture. What is stool culture? You are taking the stool sample and inoculating it on the media. To understand polygenic media and exenic culture, what is the difference? Exenic means no bacterial supplements are given to this amoeba. Polygenic means bacterium like E. coli are performed in the form of lawn culture on the agar plate, and this amoeba will feed on this E. coli and it will grow. That is polygenic culture. Okay. Other than this, we can go for stool antigen detection, that is coproantigen. This is helpful in the active cases. This is helpful in active cases and post-treatment it goes away. Okay, so this is not helpful in the carriers. And in serology, the antibody detection will take place after few days. So this is not helpful in the initial days also. Or you can do isoenzyme analysis. What is isoenzyme analysis? These isoenzymes that are secreted by the amoeba, you perform electrophoresis for these enzymes, and based on that electrophoresis, you will differentiate the different amoebas. Okay. Other than this, we can perform molecular diagnosis. We were performing PCR for what? To differentiate various morphological similar ant amoeba, Histolytica, Dispar, Moshkovsky and Bangladesh. Okay. See, can you see this is saline wet mount. What can you see here? This is amoeba. Not necessarily that it is looking like this here, will it look the same to you, because it does not have any rigid cell wall structure, so it is constantly changing its shape, right? Also, it is motile because it has this pseudopodium. What is this? This is nucleus. Okay, it has central karyosome, this peripheral granules. See, in the second picture, you will be able to see there are these RBCs. These RBCs are the pathognomic significant characteristic of E. histolytica, because other entamoebas do not eat RBCs. Okay, if you are seeing the RBCs inside this, it means that it is E. histolytica. Okay. What is this? This is a cyst. This was what? This was a trophozoite. This is cyst. This is saline mount. This is iodine mount. Okay. Why iodine mount? Because this granular, this nuclear material here is enhanced. Can you see this is enhanced? This is which kind of cyst? Is it a developed mature cyst? How many nuclei can you see? Here, how many nuclei can you see? 2. So, it is binucleated. It is yet in the developmental stage, right? This is ICT TRIAGE panel test. What is this? It has E. histolytica, Giardia and Cryptosporidium. So, usually it is helping you to do the bedside diagnosis of the causative organism to treat it. So, this is parasite panel immunochromatographic test. Okay, there are 3 organisms that you can diagnose here: E. histolytica, Giardia and Cryptosporidium. Okay. How can you treat intestinal amoebiasis? There are 2 kinds of drugs. First is luminal drugs and tissue drugs. What are tissue drugs doing? Was cyst invading the intestinal layer? Trophozoite was invading the layer. So what will it do? These tissue agents will kill the trophozoites within the tissues. These. But will they act on the luminal agents? Lumen में क्या है? Cyst. Lumen means? Lumen is the intestinal के ऊपर जो परत है जहाँ पे खाना जा रहा है तुम्हारा, है ना, जहाँ पे जमा हो रहा है ये सब, that is lumen. So there you will have to give this luminal agents. What will they do? They will inhibit the protein synthesis of this organism. So we need 2 kinds of agents, one that will act on the tissues and one that will act inside the lumen. Okay, luminal agents and tissue agents. Along with that, you will also replenish the fluids and electrolytes, and you will avoid the ingestion of contaminated food and water. We saw that E. dispar, Moshkovsky, Bangladeshi are similar to E. histolytica. They are also able to cause non-invasive diarrhea in infants. E. dispar is non-pathogenic commensal that is found in the human intestine, and E. Bangladeshi can also cause diarrhea. Okay. How are you differentiating them? Based on PCR and Zymodyne study that we saw. Also, we saw that there are no RBCs inside the other entamoebas. Only E. histolytica was having RBCs. This is the maker of invasiveness. E. histolytica is the maker of invasiveness. There are certain non-pathogenic amoeba that you should know. See, based on their names, you can remember that E. gingivalis is present in the mouth. E. hartmanni, E. coli is present in your intestine. Endolimax nana and Entamoeba bushli. These are all non-pathogenic amoeba. They are all commensals in the human intestine. How to differentiate between E. histolytica and E. coli, because E. coli is Entamoeba coli, not Escherichia coli. Okay, Entamoeba coli is what? It's a protozoa. It's just as Entamoeba histolytica, but it is a commensal. How will you differentiate this commensal from E. histolytica? You will not find RBCs in E. coli. When you will see it in the stool sample, there will be no RBCs in its trophozoite. And this E. histolytica, very unidirectional purposeful motility you will be able to see. But here it will show very sluggish motility. Okay. Plus there are some nuclear differences. This karyosome is very small with central nuclear membrane and lined by the chromatin granules, whereas this karyosome is large and eccentric. Can you see here? There are food particles. There is no ectoplasm differentiated. You can see multiple nuclei. In Entamoeba histolytica, we could see 4 nuclei, right? Here you can see multiple nuclei, up to 8 nuclei. That was about E. histolytica. Coming to intestinal flagellate infection. Why flagellate? Because they are having flagella. So they are having flagella, will they be motile or non-motile? Motile. What kind of motility does Giardia show? Remember, this looks like leaf, so they will show falling leaf motility. When you see it under the microscope, you will see the leaf is falling. That is why the name is given, falling leaf motility. Okay? Giardiasis is the disease that is caused by Giardia lamblia. 2 species are known, intestinalis and duodenalis. Easy to remember based on the names of your organs. It was first observed by Leeuwenhoek. Who was Leeuwenhoek? Who invented the microscope? Okay. So he first observed it in his own stool sample. Okay. Later it was described by Lamble and Giard, and that's why it was named as Giardia lamblia. Okay. It has the worldwide distribution. Again, in the warm tropical climate, you could see it. This is how it looks. This is the trophozoite. This is the cyst. In trophozoite, there are 4 pairs of flagella. Can you see? This is 1 pair, these are 2 pairs, and this is 3. And this is 4. Okay? There are 4 pairs of flagella. 2 suckling discs and 2 nucleus. Okay? What is this part known as? The part within the cell of the organism? Axoneme. Where else have you seen this axoneme? You have seen this axoneme where else? Have you seen this in trypanosomes? Right. So this internal part of flagellum is known as axoneme. Okay, this is how you remember the structure of trophozoite of Giardia. And this is what? This is a cyst. It has 4 nucleus. This is the axoneme and this is cyst wall. Okay, this is the lateral view of trophozoite. Life cycle is exactly same as Entamoeba histolytica, except it does not cause extraintestinal infections. Okay, and it is not related to it is not only confined to the HIV patients. Okay, except here trophozoites can also longitudinally multiply by binary fission. When this cyst is ingested, its cyst undergoes excistation in duodenum, trophozoites are released, and this trophozoite can divide into two. There will be two trophozoites. Okay, these trophozoites, they adhere to mucosa, then released into the lumen to jejunum, undergo encystation, and cyst is passed in the feces, and cyst is again the infective form. Okay. About 10 to 25 cysts can cause the infection. What are the risk factors? Poor hygiene, debilitated patients, immunodeficiency, but they are not restricted to HIV. Trophozoites, you can see they are adhering to the duodenal mucosa, causing the destruction of intestinal epithelium, but they do not cause any invasion. They feed on the mucus secretions. Since they are feeding on the mucus secretions and they are not letting any nutrients to be absorbed, what will you see? The pathognomic feature here is malabsorption. Okay, steatorrhea, fat stool, fatty stool. Patient will develop what? Lethargy. How will you see malabsorption through the stool sample? You will see that there is a foul smelling, profuse, frothy diarrhea. Okay. Also, there is malabsorption related to vitamin A, B12 and iron. So, patient will develop lethargy, tingling, nerve numbness, all these factors, all these symptoms. Okay. There is antigenic variation that is observed in Giardia, which is exhibited by variant surface protein. In stool examination, you will again see cyst or trophozoite, but pus and RBCs are not seen in Giardia infection. Okay, within the trophozoite, see trophozoite is easy to diagnose because it has flagella. It looks like leaf. It shows falling leaf motility. So there will be no RBCs also in the stool sample. You will be better able to differentiate it. But since the shedding occurs intermittently in either the cases, in case of Giardia and Entamoeba, you have to take more than 3 stool samples because there is a chance that you might miss it in the first stool sample. So, more the stool samples, better the chance of diagnosing, right? What is Entro test? We saw this Entro test before. This is the gelatin capsule that is attached with the thread to the cheek of the patient, and the patient is told to swallow this string capsule. Okay. After 4 hours, you will take out this capsule and observe it. Whatever material was attached to it, you will dissolve it into the saline waters, and you will observe this into the microscope. So, the trophozoites that were attached to the duodenal wall, they will get on this string, on this capsule, and that's how you can make the diagnosis. Okay, this thing you can also help in other organisms such as Cryptosporidium, strongyloids, etc. Just remember, this is known as Entro test or string test. What is this? Is it a cyst or trophozoite? This is a cyst of Giardia. Okay, you can see. Is it looking like a leaf? No, it is circular. It has 4 nuclei. Okay, this is the cyst of Giardia. This is iodine mount. This is immunofluorescence assay, right? You are using antibodies here. What is this? This is a trophozoite of Giardia. You can see leaf-like structure, 2 nucleus. The flagellates are not clearly detectable. Here you can see these anterior flagellae. Can you see it here? 4 pairs of flagella, 2 nucleus. Okay, this is trophozoite of Giardia. Same as Entamoeba histolytica, you can perform antigen detection, antibody detection. You can go for culture on exenic medium, Diamond's medium, and molecular methods such as PCR, or you can go for radiological findings with the help of barium meal. You can perform X-ray with barium meal. For treatment, you have to give tinidazole or metronidazole. Coming to opportunistic coccidian parasitic infections. When you see coccidian, you have to remember these intestinal parasites: Cryptosporidium, Cyclospora, Cystoisospora. Okay? They can cause severe infection in patients with HIV who has less than 100 CD4 count. Okay? What will they cause? They will produce profuse watery diarrhea in these patients. And how do you diagnose them? Based on acid-fast oocyst in stool. You stain the stool with Zn stain, modified Zn stain, and you see oocyst of these 3. Okay? These are the sporulated oocyst. Just remember the difference. The first one here is Cryptosporidium. What can you see? You can see there is a cyst wall. Inside it, there are 4 sporozoites. In Cyclospora, there are 2 cysts. Okay, there are 2 sporocysts, and within those sporocysts, there are 2 each sporozoites. So this is Cyclospora. Just remember, cycle has 2 wheels, 2 sporocysts, 2 sporozoites. Easy to remember about Cyclospora. Then Cystoisospora is oval in shape. Particularly oval in shape. So when you are seeing this oocyst, and if it's oval in shape, you will be able to differentiate this from these 2. Okay, this is oval in shape. It also has 2 sporocysts and 4 sporozoites. 4 sporozoites. Coming to the life cycle, see, this man is acquiring infection through again food and contaminated water. It again undergoes excistation in small intestine. The sporozoites are released. These release sporozoites through their apical site. What is apical? Can you see this pointed structure? This is the apical site. Through this apical site, these sporozoites attach to the brush border of intestinal epithelium. And inside these parasitophorous vacuoles, they will reside. Okay. Inside it takes place the schizogony. What is schizogony? They become merozoites. And these merozoites then again transform into macrogametes or macrogametes. Microgametes or macrogametes will form the zygote, and this process is known as gametogony. First it was schizogony, okay. Then it was undergoing gametogony, and then again this thick-walled and thin-walled oocyst, this will form sporulated oocyst and feces. So this is the infective form. This is not infective form, but all of this is taking place where? Inside the epithelium. This sporogony, this is known as sporogony. This thin-walled sporulated oocyst is causing infection to man again by which route? By autoinfection. What is autoinfection? What is autoinfection? A man is already infected and he is using this contaminated. Man is already infected and he is using the contaminated hands to eat or putting his hands into the mouth and causing the autoinfection again. And thick-walled sporulated oocysts are released in the stool. Let's take a look at the pathogenesis. We saw that the apical site was invading the intestinal epithelium. Then it was residing in parasitophorous vacuole, right? Then this cytokines were released which were inducing inflammation. What were the cytokines that were released? TNF alpha, interleukin 8 and prostaglandins. Okay. This will increase the intestinal secretion of chloride and water, and it will lead to profuse watery diarrhea. Okay. In immunocompetent host, there are two different people getting infected. First is immunocompetent host. These immunocompetent people will produce what? Watery non-bloody diarrhea. This is the common presentation. Abdominal pain, fever, nausea, weight loss. This happens in all other diarrheal infections, right? But it usually subsides within 1 to 2 weeks. But in case of immunocompromised patients, you will see persistent profuse diarrhea, sometimes up to 25 liters per day. Is it possible? Okay. 25 liters per day sometimes in HIV patients. So when this patient comes to you, you will be able to see this patient has gone severely cachexic. Okay. This is immunocompromised patient. Severe weight loss, wasting and abdominal pain. What are the extra? He will also produce extraintestinal manifestations such as biliary tract infection, respiratory infections and pancreatitis. Okay, pancreatitis pose a very bad prognosis. Which samples you will take? Of course, the stool sample, but in case of immunocompromised patients, you can also take sputum, bronchial wash, duodenal or jejunal aspirates. Use concentration techniques to concentrate these stool samples to detect these oocysts, or you can use the acid-fast technique with 0.5 to 1% of sulfuric acid, and you will be able to see these red color oocysts against the blue background. You can use direct fluorescence antibody staining, or in such case you will be able to differentiate these oocysts because, take a look here. See, this correlation of oocyst is taking place in the enterocyte in case of Cryptosporidium, okay. But Cyclospora and Cystoisospora, the sporulation of oocyst is taking place where? In the soil, in the environment after the feces is passed from the patient. So, diagnostic form becomes this, right? In case of Cryptosporidium, the diagnostic form is sporulated oocyst, but in rest too, it is unsporulated oocyst, okay? Your infective form remains what? Sporulated oocyst, but diagnostic form changes in Cyclospora and Cystoisospora. Okay? Other than this, there is one important feature, that is fluorescence, autofluorescence. Cryptosporidium does not show autofluorescence. You have to stain these antigens with the acridine dyes or the fluorescent dyes, okay? But in case of Cyclospora and Cystoisospora, under the fluorescent microscope, if there are antigens present and you stain them with the antibodies, you will be able to see autofluorescence. They will fluoresce on itself without addition of any fluorescence dye, okay? This is the main difference between the two, between the three. This is Cryptosporidium species, okay, circular. This is the Cyclospora. You can see this is not sporulated. And here, can you say this is sporulated oocyst? See, there are two oocysts in the wet mound. This one, unsporulated, because this is not having two sporocysts that are present in Cystoisospora belli. See, this is oval in structure, but no two sporocysts. It means this is unsporulated. Here, oval, two sporocysts. So this is sporulated. Inside it is, what is there? 4 sporozoids. Okay? You can perform antigen detection from the stool sample through ELISA. You can perform antibody detection also, but this is only used for seroepidemiological purpose, not for the diagnosis. For routine diagnosis, you are using acid-fast stain and wet mouth. For them, you can use nitazoxanide or cotrimazole, but in case with HIV, you have to treat the patients with antiretroviral therapy and fluid replacements. These drugs may not be useful in immunocompromised patients. What are other intestinal protozoal diseases? I told you about Sarcocystis. It is not meant for the human. Human is the accidental host for Sarcocystis. Blastocystis hominis is again a commensal in human intestine. It is able to cause diarrhea. Trypanosoma cruzi can cause megacolon and all those infections. Okay, microsporidiosis is now categorized under fungus. It used to be a parasite, but it's now categorized under fungus. You can also stain this with Zedin stain. Okay, modified Zedin stain. It is gram positive if you stain this. Coming to Balantidium coli, this is the last organism for today. Balantidium coli is the largest protozoa known to infect human. It is also the only ciliated parasite. Can you see the cilia surrounding this trophozoite? This is the trophozoite, okay? And this is the cyst. Its main reservoir is pig, but causes accidental infection in man, and again you can see this is present in the active cases, double walled cyst, this is present in the carrier cases, same as Entamoeba histolytica, okay. This is the life cycle where pig is involved. Pig is the reservoir, man is the accidental host, right. This is how you will be able to figure. Inside the saline wet mount, you can see the ciliated, this is the cilia, the ciliated organism, okay. And this is cyst. You can treat them with tetracycline or metronidazole. The symptoms are same: diarrhea, dysentery, mucus with blood, and nausea, abdominal pain, etc. Okay, this was about the intestinal protozoal diseases.